Ma'am, we've received another complaint about a disturbance here. Can you please explain what's happening?
I have every right to water my own lawn, and if she doesn't like it, she can move.
I need you to calm down and speak clearly.
This isn't about race, it's about common
Which some people clearly don't have.
He stood there, badge glinting under the streetlights, his posture rigid, his face a mask of practiced indifference. Officer David Miller. 17 complaints already etched into his internal affairs file, a testament to a career marked by allegations of misconduct, excessive force, and racial bias. 17 complaints. Yet, he still wore the uniform, still carried the authority of the state. On this particular evening, his focus narrowed on a woman who had dedicated her life to healing, a woman who held the lives of countless patients in her skilled hands. Dr. Anya Sharma, a neurosurgeon of international repute, found herself reduced to a suspect, her credentials, her dignity, her very humanity dismissed with a wave of a hand. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know. Your engagement helps us bring these critical stories to light. The air hung heavy and humid over Maplewood, New Jersey, on that crisp autumn evening of October 27th, 2022. A faint smell of burning leaves mingled with the exhaust fumes of passing cars along Elmwood Drive, an affluent, tree-lined street where historic Victorian homes stood proudly beside meticulously maintained modern builds. Shadows stretched long and distorted under the glow of gas lamps, creating an almost picturesque scene, a deceptive tranquility that belied the simmering tensions beneath its surface. It was precisely 7:15 p.m., a time when most residents were winding down, perhaps enjoying dinner or a quiet evening stroll. Dr. Anya Sharma, a name synonymous with medical excellence, had just returned from another grueling shift at the University Medical Center, where she served as the head of neurosurgery. Her day had begun before dawn, navigating the complexities of a rare cranial tumor removal, followed by a marathon of consultations, research presentations, and departmental meetings. Dr. Sharma was not merely a doctor. She was a luminary in her field, a graduate of Harvard Medical School, with an undergraduate degree from MIT in biomedical engineering. Her academic journey was paved with distinctions and groundbreaking research. Her work on non-invasive surgical techniques for neurological disorders had earned her the prestigious Lasker Award for Clinical Medical Research and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, among a litany of other accolades. She had published dozens of peer-reviewed articles in the most esteemed medical journals, mentored a generation of aspiring surgeons, and regularly volunteered her expertise in underserved communities globally. Dr. Sharma had not merely achieved her position. She had unequivocally earned it through relentless dedication, unparalleled intellect, and profound commitment to human well-being. Her home on Elmwood Drive was not just a house. It was a sanctuary, a quiet retreat purchased with years of relentless effort and sacrifice. Yet, the authority wielded by Officer David Miller that evening was not earned. It was granted, and, according to a growing body of evidence, consistently abused. His internal affairs file, obtained through a public records request, painted a disturbing portrait of a public servant whose judgment was repeatedly called into question. Miller had joined the Maplewood Police Department in 2015, and by 2022, his record was a stark anomaly within the force. In 2018, just 3 years into his tenure, Miller was cited for excessive force during a seemingly routine traffic stop. A dashboard camera footage, later leaked to local news, showed him aggressively pulling a driver from his vehicle after a minor infraction, pinning him against the hood despite the driver's clear compliance. The complaint, filed by the driver, a black man, alleged racial profiling. Miller received a 3-day suspension, a slap on the wrist for an incident that left the victim with contusions and emotional trauma. A year later, in 2019, another complaint emerged. Miller was accused of racial profiling during a pedestrian stop in a predominantly black neighborhood of Northwood. He had detained a young man walking home from his evening shift, demanding identification without probable cause. When the man questioned the stop, Miller allegedly escalated the situation, threatening arrest for disorderly conduct. The internal review, while acknowledging the lack of probable cause, found insufficient evidence of racial bias, ultimately dismissing the complaint. The pattern, however, was becoming clearer to those who paid attention. In 2020, Miller responded to a domestic dispute call. Instead of de-escalating the situation, which involved a verbal argument between a couple, he reportedly antagonized one of the parties, leading to a physical altercation that resulted in the arrest of the victim, not the aggressor. The victim, a woman who had initially called for help, found herself in handcuffs, while Miller's report downplayed his role in the escalation. Again, a formal complaint was filed, alleging incompetence and a failure to uphold departmental standards. He was mandated to attend a de-escalation training course, which evidently bore little fruit. By 2021, the allegations against Officer Miller had taken a darker turn. He was accused of verbal abuse towards a homeless individual near the downtown library. Witnesses reported Miller using derogatory language and threatening to confiscate the man's meager belongings without cause. The complaint, filed by a concerned citizen, highlighted a consistent disregard for the dignity of vulnerable populations. These incidents, though individually distinct, collectively painted a picture of an officer whose interactions with the public were frequently characterized by aggression, suspicion, and a troubling lack of empathy, particularly towards individuals of color or those perceived as marginalized. The stage was set for a confrontation that would expose not just one officer's failings, but the systemic vulnerabilities within the institution he represented. The call came into Maplewood Dispatch at precisely 7:10 p.m. The caller, Mrs. Carol Jenkins, Dr. Sharma's next-door neighbor, was known to dispatchers. Her voice, thin and reedy, crackled to the radio waves, laced with familiar indignation. "Yes, I'm calling again about the suspicious person at 142 Elmwood Drive," she began, her tone accusatory. "She's out front again, loitering. I've told you people, she doesn't belong here. She's tampering with the plants. Looks like she's casing the place. Dark skin, wearing dark clothes. Just looks suspicious." Dispatch notes, later revealed in court documents, marked the call as repeated harassment complaint, with an internal flag for potential racial bias by caller. Despite this flag, the standard protocol for a suspicious person was initiated, effectively ignoring the caller's established history of racially motivated complaints against Dr. Sharma. Meanwhile, Dr. Sharma, utterly oblivious to the biased narrative being spun about her, was engaged in the most mundane, legitimate activity. Having shed her scrubs and changed into comfortable loungewear, dark blue yoga pants, and a charcoal gray cashmere sweater, she stepped out onto her meticulously manicured front porch. In her hands, a delicate, antique brass watering can. She was tending to her prized collection of Phalaenopsis orchids, which bloomed in vibrant hues on a custom-built tiered stand. The evening air was cool and refreshing after the sterile environment of the operating room. A classical music podcast, featuring a retrospective on Bach's cello suites, played softly from a portable speaker on the porch swing. This was her ritual, her moment of quiet contemplation and connection with the natural world after a day spent battling disease and despair. She hummed softly along with the cello's melancholic melody, carefully misting the orchids, admiring their delicate petals. She was, in every sense of the word, at home in her own space, pursuing a harmless hobby. Then, the flashing blue and red lights cut through the twilight. A patrol car, Unit 312, screeched to a halt at the curb, its tires spitting gravel. Officer David Miller emerged, his hand already resting on his sidearm, his demeanor radiating an almost palpable aggression. He approached Dr. Sharma's property with a purposeful stride, bypassing the quaint stone walkway and instead cutting across the lawn, trampling a patch of carefully cultivated petunias. "Evening, ma'am," Miller barked, his voice devoid of any pleasantry. "What are you doing here?" Dr. Sharma, startled, slowly lowered her watering can. "I'm sorry, officer. I live here. I'm watering my orchids." Her voice, usually calm and authoritative in the oar, held a note of confusion. Miller scoffed, scanning the property, his eyes lingering on the porch, then back to Dr. Sharma. "We receive a report of a suspicious person loitering and tampering with property. That description fits you." "A suspicious person?" Dr. Sharma's eyebrows knitted in disbelief. "Officer, this is my home. My name is Dr. Anya Sharma. I own this property." She gestured towards the ornate house, number affixed to the porch pillar. "Anyone can say that "Ma'am," Miller retorted, taking another step closer, invading her personal space. "Do you have any identification on you?" Dr. Sharma, though perturbed, maintained her composure. "Yes, of course." She reached into the pocket of her sweater, retrieving her wallet. She pulled out her driver's license and her University Medical Center ID, which clearly displayed her name, photograph, and title as head of neurosurgery. "Here, officer, my license and my hospital ID." Miller snatched the cards from her hand, barely glancing at them. He held them up, squinting in the dim light. "University Medical Center." "Huh? Anyone can fake that. This doesn't prove you live here." His tone was dismissive, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. Should officers be legally mandated to verify identification and property ownership before escalating an encounter based solely on a potentially biased complaint? "Officer, I can show you the deed to this house," Dr. Sharma offered, her voice now edged with growing indignation. "It's inside. My name is on it. My car is in the driveway, registered to this address." "Stay right there," Miller commanded. Ignoring her offer, he pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, Unit 312. I've got a female matching description at 142 Elmwood. Claims to live here, but IDs are questionable. Requesting backup for verification." The absurdity of the situation began to dawn on Dr. Sharma. She, a highly respected professional, was being treated as a criminal on her own property, her identity and achievements summarily dismissed. Her neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, had emerged from her own house, now standing on her porch, a triumphant smirk visible even in the low light. Other neighbors, drawn by the flashing lights and the escalating voices, began to gather cautiously on their own lawns, their faces a mixture of curiosity and concern. A few recognized Dr. Sharma and exchanged confused glances. "Officer, this is outrageous," Dr. Sharma asserted, her voice rising slightly. "You are harassing me. I have done nothing wrong." "You're being uncooperative," Miller shot back, his hand now firmly on his holstered weapon. "Do not resist. We can do this the easy way, or the hard way." Just as the tension reached a breaking point, another patrol car pulled up, followed quickly by an unmarked SUV. Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, Miller's direct supervisor, emerged from the SUV, her expression grim. She had been monitoring the dispatch calls and recognized the address and the caller's history. She took in the scene Dr. Sharma, a figure quiet dignity, standing bewildered on her porch, and Officer Miller, bristling with aggression, his back to the gathering crowd. "Officer Miller." Sergeant Rodriguez's voice cut through the evening air, sharp and authoritative. "What is going on here?" Miller, momentarily flustered, turned to his supervisor. "Sergeant, I have a suspicious person here. Claims to be the homeowner, but her IDs..." Sergeant Rodriguez didn't let him finish. She walked directly past Miller, approaching Dr. Sharma. "Dr. Sharma, I am so incredibly sorry about this. My name is Sergeant Rodriguez." She then turned back to Miller, her gaze unwavering. "Officer Miller, step away from Dr. Sharma immediately, and hand me your badge and weapon. Now." The command was absolute, leaving no room for defiance. The immediate resolution was swift, though the emotional damage had already been done. Sergeant Rodriguez, after a brief, hushed conversation with Dr. Sharma, during which he offered a sincere apology on behalf of the department, escorted the shaken doctor back into her home. She then turned her full attention to Officer Miller, who stood rigid, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and humiliation. On the spot, Sergeant Rodriguez relieved him of his duty, confiscating his badge and service weapon, and ordering him to return to the precinct for an immediate internal review. The gathering neighbors, who had witnessed the entire, humiliating spectacle, dispersed slowly, their murmurs filling the sudden silence. Should an officer involved in such a clear-cut case of bias, harassment, and abuse of authority face automatic termination without the possibility of an internal review, especially given a pre-existing complaint history? The incident, however, did not end on Elmwood Drive. One of the neighbors, a young law student named Maya Patel, had recorded the entire confrontation on her smartphone. Within hours, her video, initially posted to her personal Instagram account, had exploded across social media platforms. By midnight, it had garnered over 1 million views, shared relentlessly across Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. The hashtag Justice for Dara Sharma began trending nationally, eventually accumulating over 5 million mentions within 24 hours. Local news channels picked up the story, followed by national outlets, showing the stark contrast between Dr. Sharma's distinguished career and the demeaning treatment she received. The clip of Officer Miller dismissing her credentials with "anyone can fake that" became a viral soundbite, emblematic of a deeper, more insidious problem. The institutional response was immediate and unprecedented. The Maplewood City Council scheduled an emergency meeting broadcast live, where residents expressed their outrage. Police Chief Thomas Vance, visibly shaken, issued a public statement condemning Officer Miller's actions and promising a thorough investigation. "We failed Dr. Sharma," Chief Vance admitted, his voice strained, "and we failed the community we swore to protect. This behavior will not be tolerated." Dr. Sharma, though deeply traumatized, refused to let the incident be swept under the rug. Within days, she filed a civil lawsuit against the city of Maplewood and the Maplewood Police Department. The complaint, meticulously prepared by a team of civil rights attorneys, detailed claims of racial discrimination, false arrest, emotional distress, and a blatant violation of her 4th and 14th Amendment rights. It argued that the department's failure to adequately address Officer Miller's extensive history of misconduct constituted deliberate indifference and allowed a pattern of abuse to fester. The lawsuit also highlighted the department's inadequate training protocols regarding implicit bias and de-escalation, and its lack of robust accountability mechanisms for officers with repeated complaints. The city, facing overwhelming public pressure and undeniable video evidence, moved quickly to settle. After intense negotiations that lasted just under 2 months, the city of Maplewood announced a settlement with Dr. Anya Sharma for a staggering $2 million. It was at the time the largest settlement in Maplewood's history for a police misconduct case, a stark acknowledgement of the egregious nature of the officer's actions and the systemic failures that enabled them. The consequences for Officer Miller were equally severe. His internal investigation was expedited, concluding with an unequivocal recommendation for termination. On December 15, 2022, Officer David Miller received his termination letter. The letter, later released to the public, was unsparing. "Your conduct on October 27, 2022, involving Dr. Anya Sharma, constitutes gross misconduct, a severe violation of departmental policy, and an irreparable erosion of public trust. Your repeated disregard for professional conduct and your demonstrated inability to adhere to the core principles of community policing have made your continued employment untenable." Furthermore, the New Jersey Police Training Commission moved to decertify Officer Miller, effectively revoking his ability to serve as a police officer anywhere in the state, a rare and definitive end to a career marred by controversy. In the wake of the settlement and Officer Miller's termination, Dr. Anya Sharma delivered a powerful, moving testimony before a joint session of the Maplewood City Council and the Police Oversight Board. Her voice, though still tinged with the pain of the experience, resonated with an unwavering strength. She began by recounting the mundane details of that evening: the watering of her orchids, the classical music, the sudden intrusion of flashing lights. "I am a neurosurgeon," she stated, her gaze sweeping across the room, meeting the eyes of every council member and police official. "I operate on the most delicate organ in the human body. I hold lives in my hands every single day. I have dedicated my entire professional existence to healing, to saving, to improving the quality of life for others. Yet, on my own property, in front of my own home, I was treated like a criminal. My identity, my achievements, my very right to exist peacefully were dismissed with a contemptuous wave of a hand by an officer sworn to protect me." Her voice grew louder, imbued with quiet but profound indignation. "If this can happen to me," she continued, her words echoing through the chamber, "a black woman who has dedicated her life to healing, who holds advanced degrees from the most prestigious institutions, who has earned every single accolade through tireless effort and sacrifice, then what hope is there for others? What hope is there for the young black man walking home from work, for the black mother tending her garden, for any person of color who simply seeks to live their life without fear of arbitrary harassment and discrimination. Her testimony was not just a personal account. It was a searing indictment of a system that allowed such abuses to persist. Should an incident of this magnitude, involving clear racial bias and a documented pattern of officer misconduct, automatically trigger a federal investigation into the police department's practices and training? The department's internal findings, presented alongside Dr. Sharma's testimony, painted a stark picture of systemic failures. The report acknowledged inadequate implicit bias training that failed to equip officers with the tools to recognize and mitigate their own prejudices. It cited insufficient oversight of officers with disciplinary histories, allowing individuals like Officer Miller to continue their patterns of misconduct without meaningful intervention. Furthermore, the report pointed to a culture of impunity where minor infractions were often overlooked, fostering an environment where more serious abuses could flourish. The lack of robust accountability mechanisms, particularly for complaints involving racial bias, was identified as a critical vulnerability. The biased initial dispatch call, which failed to properly contextualize Mrs. Jenkins's history, was also highlighted as a procedural flaw that exacerbated the situation. In response to these damning findings and the immense public pressure, the Maplewood Police Department announced a series of sweeping reforms. These included mandatory, recurring implicit bias training for all officers, developed in conjunction with independent civil rights organizations. An independent oversight board, with subpoena power and civilian representation, was established to review all police misconduct complaints. The department committed to a comprehensive review of its body camera policy, ensuring footage was readily accessible and properly reviewed in all incidents. Finally, revised complaint procedures were implemented, designed to ensure that complaints, especially those with racial undertones, were taken seriously and investigated thoroughly, with clear pathways for public transparency. This incident, however, transcends the specific actions of one officer or the policies of one police department. It serves as a stark, chilling reminder that bias, unchecked and unchallenged, can override objective evidence, professional credentials, and fundamental human dignity. It exposes a profound vulnerability that even the most accomplished individuals face when confronted with systemic prejudice and the unchecked power of law enforcement. Dr. Sharma's experience reveals how deeply ingrained racial bias can be, so much so that a distinguished neurosurgeon, watering her orchids in her own front yard, can be instantly dehumanized and criminalized based solely on the color of her skin and the malicious intent of a prejudiced neighbor. The consequences of that evening rippled far beyond the immediate settlement. Officer Miller's career was justly ended, his authority stripped, his reputation irrevocably tarnished. The Maplewood Police Department faced a profound reckoning, its reputation battered, its public trust severely eroded. But the deepest scars were borne by Dr. Anya Sharma, who, despite her resilience and strength, endured the trauma being treated as a stranger, an interloper, a threat in the very sanctuary of her home. It forced her, and indeed an entire community, to confront the uncomfortable truth that for many, particularly for Black Americans, the badge does not always represent protection, but often suspicion and potential danger. What changes now is a $2 million settlement and a few policy reforms truly enough to dismantle the deeply entrenched biases within our institutions? Is it enough to ensure that no other Dr. Anya Sharma has to endure such a humiliating and terrifying experience? Should police departments be mandated by federal law to publish all internal affairs complaint records, including outcomes and disciplinary actions, in a publicly accessible, searchable database? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This story is not just about one officer or one doctor or one city. It's about all of us. It's about the kind of society we demand, the systems we tolerate, and the justice we are willing to fight for. We're not stopping, and we need your voice. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that challenge the status quo and demand accountability.